Giyom and Taki are two young street vendors who live in a city plagued by heavy fog that can render people invisible. This story comes from Lafcadio Hearn's Tales from the Japanese. And if you enjoy this spooky tale, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss our future episodes. Warning: this episode contains themes that might not be suitable for everyone. Viewer discretion is advised. Once upon a time, in a city shrouded in perpetual fog, lived two young men named Giyom and Taki, who earned their living by selling cakes. Every morning, when the thick mist blanketed the city, they would hang up their wares in the market stalls, piling them high and calling out their prices. In those days, the fog was so dense that people often lost their way and stumbled around, bumping into walls, houses, and each other. Sometimes people vanished entirely, swallowed up by the fog, and nobody ever saw them again. To avoid losing their way, the two friends stuck close to each other, helping each other to find their way home through the maze of streets. One afternoon, as they were returning home from the market, they started arguing, and as a result, Giyom turned and walked into the fog without paying attention to where he was going. Suddenly, he heard a voice saying, "Hey, hey!" And when he stopped and looked around, he couldn't see anyone. "Hey, hey!" the voice called out again, and then he saw a shape coming toward him through the fog. At first it seemed human, but slowly it began to change, growing thinner and vaguer until it was just a wisp of fog. Soon the shape reached out a hand to him, and Giyom instinctively pulled back, but then it disappeared. Giyom waited, but Taki didn't come looking for him. Perhaps he was home already, Giyom thought. Well, he himself was lost and didn't know where he was. So he started to walk along the road, hoping to find someone or something familiar. After a while, he saw a faint glow ahead and hurried toward it. When he got closer, he saw that it was a small tea house. He stepped inside and found an old woman sitting behind the counter. Without thinking twice, he plopped down on a stool opposite her. Although he wasn't particularly thirsty, he felt too uneasy to refuse whatever drink the old woman poured for him. Just as he was taking the first sip, a man suddenly appeared at the door. It was Taki. Relief flooded through Giyom, and he was about to call out to his friend when Taki stopped short, his mouth hanging open. "Is that really you?" he stammered, staring at the old woman as if she'd sprouted another head. "Why, you look exactly like my grandmother." Meanwhile, Giyom had finished his tea and was preparing to leave. "Don't go," Taki suddenly exclaimed. "Stay here a few days and then we'll go back together. You'll be safe here." "But why?" Giyom asked, wondering if Taki had lost his mind. "The fog is too thick and dangerous," Taki said earnestly. "If you wander around, you won't find your way home and you'll disappear. You might even become a kappa." The following morning, Taki went out to buy breakfast, promising to return soon. Giyom was left alone in the old woman's shop and started to grow impatient. Wasn't Taki joking? Was he supposed to stay here forever? Frustrated, Giyom stood up and peeked out the window, but the thick fog made everything look gloomy and gray. He couldn't see anything except for a swaying bamboo grove near the road. Curiosity got the better of him, and he decided to take a quick look outside. As he stepped out, the old woman suddenly shouted, "Come back, you fool! Don't go outside in this weather. You'll get lost." But Giyom had already gone. He quickly ran to the bamboo grove, hiding between the tall stalks. Somehow, he felt safer there than he had in the tea house. But the wind suddenly shifted, bringing with it a wave of cold air. Giyom shivered and pressed himself against a nearby tree. Then he noticed that the ground beneath the bamboo was white. Startled, he bent down to pick up a handful of it and realized it was bone. Realizing that he was surrounded by a graveyard, he screamed and tried to run away, but the fog was thicker here and he quickly lost his way. He bumped into a stone lantern, knocking himself unconscious. He woke up to find himself lying on a soft mat inside a large room. He sat up and noticed a woman kneeling beside him. She looked ancient, with long gray hair and wrinkles all over her face, but her eyes were sharp and lively, and she smiled kindly at him. "Are you awake?" she asked. "Where am I?" he asked. "You're safe now," she replied with a gentle smile. "You fainted while wandering in the graveyard. That's how I found you." She paused for a moment. "But you mustn't stay here. You'll get lost and never find your way back." "You have to hurry." The woman handed him a sword and a bag, then opened the door and beckoned to him. "Go this way. This path will lead you home. And remember, you must never, never set foot in this place again." Giyom bowed his head in thanks and ran out of the house. The woman watched him go and sighed. Turning back to the room, she picked up a large wooden box and placed it on the table. It was adorned with beautiful paintings, but they were smudged and faded, making it impossible to tell what they were of. With trembling hands, she lifted the lid of the box. Inside nestled a sword and a bag. Reaching for the sword, she withdrew it from its sheath. The blade glistened menacingly, and the old woman shuddered as if she had touched something hot. Placing the sword back in its sheath, she closed the box, leaving Giyom's possessions untouched. Shaking off her sudden unease, she went to wash her hands in a nearby pond. Giyom, meanwhile, kept running. He didn't dare stop to catch his breath, believing that if he did, he would never find his way back to the familiar streets. After what felt like hours, he finally saw a faint light ahead. Hurrying towards it, he emerged onto a busy street, relieved to be among the living. But soon he noticed that people were staring at him strangely, and he understood that he hadn't just traveled through space. He had also traveled back in time. His clothes were old-fashioned, and his manners and language were unfamiliar. People pointed at him and whispered, "Look at that weird guy. Do you think he's one of those poor souls lost in the fog who reappear years later? What a miserable state to be in." Heartbroken, Giyom realized that although he had found his way home, he was no longer a part of this world. With no one to turn to, he walked out of town and into the forest. He wandered aimlessly for days, surviving on berries and nuts until he finally collapsed from exhaustion and hunger. Just as,